The coronavirus pandemic continues to roar back with cases in this country hitting a new daily high. What the latest polling suggests about the state of the presidential race, and music to the ears of anyone who owns AirPods. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Thursday, June 25th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Carlo, I think our new mics are so good that I hear your, like, every breath you're taking. Like, keep it down over there.
It's true that the sound is so much better. I wish that we had forced Cheddar's hand into giving us these new mics when we started going from home. But it took all the feedback to get him to do it. But I'm glad they did.
All right, Carla, let's start with the news. The U.S. set a daily record number of confirmed coronavirus cases, 36,880 on Wednesday alone. This surpasses the previous high from exactly 2 months ago. As of today, anyone traveling to New York, Connecticut, or New Jersey from a state seeing a significant outbreak will be required to self-quarantine for 14 days. California saw its biggest daily jump so far. LA County is now leading the country in infections. In Houston, hospital ICUs are running at 97% capacity. That is not good. Hospitalizations way up in other places too. So I want to reiterate again, this is not just an issue of more testing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm glad you said that, Jill. A couple things to note, I think. What's happening in the South and in the West, it's not an apples to apples comparison to what happened here in April. I think that the virus is either weakening or it is attacking younger people, which we know to be the case, some combination of the two. But there's also more treatment.
Why do you think it's weakening?
I guess because just even though deaths are a lagging indicator, it just seems like we would have seen more deaths by now. But I don't want to see. I probably shouldn't have even said that because I don't. It's just I don't know that to be the case, that it's weakening. We do know it to be.
I think you should cage that only because to your point, deaths are a lagging indicator. From everything I've heard, the virus is not getting stronger, which was a fear. But I think there is no scientific proof, to be clear, that it's getting weaker.
You're right. I shouldn't have said that. Strike that from the record.
I'm trying to
No.
I don't want to.
No, you're right.
You, but
no, you're right though. But also, the treatment options, remdesivir and that steroid, and also what we've been saying, people are taking more. The people most at risk are taking more precautions. Yeah, one piece of data that supports the theory about it hitting younger people, which is not really even a theory anymore. It's now pretty much confirmed. In March, 82% of hospitalizations here in New York City, this is when we were really in the thick of it, people over 45. In Dallas this week, 50% of the hospitalizations are people under 50. So you can certainly see that the people most at risk are not going to the hospital in the numbers that they were here in the early days. But that said, like you said, Jill, it's going to be critical to watch whether the deaths tick up in the next week or two. And, this is also a theory, so I just want to cage that. Has no scientific basis. But I do have this theory that air conditioning is doing a lot of the work in spreading the virus and the droplets. It just makes common sense, right? Like if you look at California, as you mentioned, it's really Southern California, Los Angeles and the surrounding counties that are seeing this new uptick. And when you think about California, right, the Bay Area is not having this problem. The Bay Area, Northern California, air conditioning is not really that prevalent. Like I think I heard somewhere that Stanford University didn't even have air conditioning in its dorms until a couple of years ago, right? Like it doesn't get that kind of like super hot and humid that it does here and in Southern California. People are going to be spending more times indoors, and as we've seen in China, the airflow from inside, from the air conditioning, just helps spread it. So I think that has something to do with it. It just seems like it makes sense. But the other thing I wanted to mention, I got my first test yesterday. I got a COVID diagnostic test here, and it was great. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was like.
Wait, did you go? You went somewhere to take it?
Yeah, I went to the urgent care out here in Brooklyn. It was super easy, like in and out. Barely had to wait. They were, they had their stuff together. Like quick swab, done. And that was it.
What
So I don't
made
know
you
if it's that.
decide to do it?
So I don't have any symptoms, and I don't think that I have it. But I'm actually going to be spending some extended time with my family, including a couple people who are more at risk in the next couple weeks. So my father has mandated everyone to get a test, which is smart, I think.
Very smart.
Yeah.
And good for you guys. And I totally agree about the air conditioning. I mean, whether it's spreading because of the air conditioning or whether it's just spreading because people are not, people are indoors. To your point, this weekend it's supposed to be in the 90s here in New York, and we were supposed to have plans with a couple of friends of ours. Um, the plan was to just hang out outside and be kind of
Yeah.
social, but I don't know. It's like at that point, you just cancel. It's going to be too hot. So it's like, do you
Yeah, that's a
cancel? Do you risk it and go inside? It's a lot to consider.
no, that's a good point. That's a worry, right? Because you're right. It's about to get to that point here in the Northeast where it's just like hot and humid for the next couple months, and I wonder if that will change the numbers here. The other thing, Jill, the protests were they started almost a month ago now, and there has not been a discernible increase in states that saw really big protests, specifically New York. And I think what that shows you is just it's all about indoors and masks, right? If you're going to be outdoors and you're wearing a mask and you're being smart, it's just so much harder to get infected.
The FDA, by the way, also came out and said that they have no evidence that the virus is spreading through food and food packaging. So I think that's a huge relief because I don't know about you, but we are still wiping down all of the food that we get from the supermarket, um, leaving it in the garage for a period of
Oh,
days.
really?
Yeah, I mean, and I know that a lot of people have stopped doing that. We just like out of habit. That's just
Yeah.
what we do unless we desperately need something. But I think that that's really good news in terms of just like lifestyle. I mean,
Oh,
that is
yeah.
such a pain, right?
Yeah, well, no, totally. And the silver lining is just we know much more than we did in those first couple of months. When we thought that it was, surfaces that were the big thing, and so I just hope that the people in these states that are seeing these spikes are taking this seriously.
And Carlo, really quick, remember yesterday I was mentioning that article that I read in back in February? Well, there was about a doctor in Italy who had warned the United States saying, "Hey, we
Yeah.
didn't listen to
Hmm.
China. Can you just listen to us?" So a doctor from New York sent another warning to the rest of the country. March 27th, Fred Milgram wrote, "A New York doctor's warning. China warned Italy. Italy warned us. We didn't listen. Now the onus is on the rest of America to listen to New York." I think it speaks to human nature. Is just you never think it's going to happen to you,
Yeah.
um, and I also hope that we in New York take that as a reminder as well, is that this isn't gone. We just, have not left our houses for a while, so it
Absolutely.
died down. All right, switching gears, the U.S. Marshal Service has reportedly been directed by the Justice Department to help protect national monuments around the country. Officials are said to be concerned about statues being vandalized or torn down over the July 4th holiday weekend, which is soon.
Mm, uh,
That creeped up on us.
right. I just realized. Yeah, July 4th is that next week?
I think it's next
Oh,
Friday is when the holiday.
that's crazy, man. What a weird year. Anyway, this was this just broke in the Washington Post this morning. This would be an unusual assignment for the U.S. Marshals, Jill. They're typically assigned. I mean, if you ever saw The Fugitive, you sort of remember, right? They're assigned to like protect courthouses and witnesses and transport prisoners. So this would be sort of weird for them to do. But wouldn't it just be so cool if our government cared about protecting the citizenry of this country as much as they care about protecting these statues? I know that this is a wedge issue and it's very divisive, and I have my own personal thoughts about it. But it's just, to me, it's not even in like the top 10 things I'm concerned about right now. The fact that we're hitting this record number of cases, going on 4 months now since we first knew this was going to be a crisis, and this is where the government resources are going. Meanwhile, at the same time, Jill, the federal government is cutting funding for testing sites in 13 states. I can't even, like, I don't even. That's like, it's just like a bizarro world. I don't even know what to make of that.
Well, you have to wonder if any of that is going to change now that the outbreaks aren't just really hitting blue states. They're hitting swing states and in some
Yeah.
cases red states. But I
But I
do
mean,
want to
think about,
talk.
but
So go
just
on.
very briefly on this. I mean, we had a record number of cases yesterday, as you said. Did we hear a single thing from the president or the federal government? I mean, like, I feel like I am living in a different world than the people who are voted in to protect and serve us. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me.
I mean, at this point, the reason I'm not even surprised is like I've taken it as a given that there's
Yeah.
going to be no federal response to this,
Right.
and basically it's up to individuals to make smart decisions, and you have to have faith in your local government, right? In
Yeah.
our state government, in your what your mayor is saying. At this point, yeah, I've come to there is no real federal response to
No,
this.
you're right.
The president spoke publicly yesterday, and he didn't really address it. He said something like there was going to be a beautiful surprise. I think in regard to potentially a treatment or a vaccine. Like I don't know what he was referring to, but yeah, I mean, we haven't really heard from Dr. Fauci short of that congressional hearing the other day or Dr. Birx.
Yeah.
So I don't
No, you're
know,
right. It's almost freeing to think of it that way. It's like we're on our own. So
Yeah, like I think in the beginning it was it was so frustrating because we were yearning for leadership and we were
yeah.
and yearning for a plan, but now I'm just in the acceptance phase that we're just not going to get one.
Yeah, you're
Um,
right.
besides for and also like we're counting on our wherever we work, our bosses are the businesses are being responsible, companies are being responsible. Individuals have to be responsible and local governments have to be responsible. It's a problem that's bigger than local governments, though. I mean, this
Yeah.
is a
Right.
problem that
That's the
that
issue.
deserves a federal response. But in terms of just riding this out until there's possibly a vaccine or some type of cure, I think the lesson here is that we can't rely on the federal government.
No, you're right about that.
But I do want to talk about the state of the presidential race, which is just over 4 months away. Joe Biden now holds a commanding lead over President Trump, according to the latest batch of national polling. In the widely respected New York Times Siena College poll, Biden holds his widest lead yet, 14 points. The president visits Wisconsin today. That is a state that he needs to win in November and where he is currently trailing by 8.
Yeah, and we're going to get some more battleground polls out today, which will be interesting to see. But Jill, I've gone from thinking that Joe Biden is running like the world's worst campaign to maybe the best ever. Seriously, simply by
Just
virtue of him doing nothing, right, and staying
yeah.
out of the spotlight. I mean, when was the last time you even saw Joe Biden? And he's up 14 points. Um, one of the things I wanted to mention about the polls, elections where there's an incumbent on the ticket are always referendums on the incumbent, right? You're voting whether to either support what's happened over the last 4 years or show your not support it, right? And President Trump is so polarizing that it's going to be even more so this year. I think that's probably the calculus in the Biden campaign, sort of just like let him dig his own grave. But the other thing, if you were born after 1974, which you and I both were, and I think a fair amount of our listeners probably were, you've never voted in an election in which the incumbent was defeated. So a lot of people just can't really wrap their heads around this idea that Trump could lose and leave the White House after 4 years. The last president to do that was Bush 41, right? The first President Bush in 92. And also, the Democrats are still just traumatized from 2016, right? So I think a lot of people on the left don't want to believe any of the polls. The polls had Hillary Clinton up at this, by a pretty substantial margin at this point in 2016. So I get where that is, but Biden's lead now is significant.
I think anything could change. That would be my take. And I think to your point, Biden staying out of the spotlight and kind of just letting people make this a referendum on the president is probably a good move. But he is so gaffe prone, Biden
Yeah.
is, that you don't know. I mean, when he starts getting out there and in the debates, there's a reason President Trump wants more debates, and that they're pushing for more debates. So
But here's the
I don't
thing about,
know.
and
I
I
I
get,
I think that also Biden, has arguably one of the most public. He has a long history. He was vice president for 8 years. I mean, he has a long history of public life, and he was
no,
vice president not that many years ago. So there are people
he's
who
a known
didn't like the
quantity.
direction. Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of it's going to depend on who he picks for his vice president, especially given his age. So I think this is still anyone's game.
Okay, well, I'll tell you why I disagree. I don't want to stay on this for too long, but also, I just had a point in my head. What was I going to say? The Okay, well, I forgot, but I do believe that the president. Sorry, I believe that the president's going to lose. I believe he's going to lose soundly, and I'll couch that with saying that who knows? I don't know anything. This is just how my sense of things, and the reason why that is, Jill, is because I don't see how anything breaks in his favor between now and November. Right, the pandemic is getting worse. It's not going to be getting better until there's a vaccine. Right, we're just going to have to learn to live with this thing until we have a vaccine. The economic recovery, I don't believe, is going to be this V that people are hoping. We're going to talk in a minute about the stock market yesterday, seeming to have that same feeling. The protests have not helped him, even though a lot of people thought that maybe they would. Um, President Trump, whatever you think of him, he's not good at responding to like exogenous events, right? Like he skated for 3 years, 3.5 years, because there weren't that many like external events, right? The biggest one was probably Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, which he badly mismanaged, but that didn't hurt him politically because Puerto Rico can't vote. And the sad fact is a lot of Americans don't even know that Puerto Rico is part of this country, or they don't care. This is different because it's hitting everybody. And the fact is, a majority of Americans, if you take these polls, a majority of Americans believe this now to be a failed presidency, and it's simple as that. And it's very hard to change people's minds once they make that decision. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to stay on this, but the thing that I just remember what I wanted to say. I understand that what you were saying about how Joe Biden is gaffe prone and Trump wants more debates, but President Trump is gaffe prone too. I mean, he did a 10-minute riff on like drinking water and walking down a ramp at his rally last week. Like if any other president or presidential candidate did that, we'd be like, that was the biggest gaffe in history, right? It's just that the Overton window on this stuff has been so shifted. It's fascinating. Really.
I think that President Trump has been held to a different standard.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's all I'll say. And I also think turnout's going to be huge.
Yeah.
So Biden has to get people excited to want to come out. And I think the question is, can he? So I don't know. Again, I just feel like we are too far out, and who knows what's going to be happening then in terms of even the ability to vote. Are mail-in ballots going to be readily accessible? Is the coronavirus going to be back with a vengeance? And are people going to be willing to go out? So I think it's just so too soon to tell.
No, I think I do think you're right about that, Joel. We never
Let's
know.
Let's talk about Wall Street, though. The Dow dropped more than 700 points yesterday as investors pumped the brakes on a broad stock market rally over growing worries that the economic recovery is not going to be as fast or as smooth as many had hoped, given the surge in new coronavirus cases.
So the other thing that hit the market yesterday was this news that the U.S. is considering slapping $3 billion in tariffs on European exports, things like French cheese and olives and beer from Germany. I'm not exactly sure who thought that we needed right now a trade war, but that was at least a little bit part of it yesterday.
Also, Americans are saving more money than ever. U.S. banks have seen a record $2 trillion in deposits since the pandemic started, and the personal saving rate hit a record 33% in April, up from 7.5% at the end of 2019. The influx of cash from the PPP, enhanced unemployment benefits, and stimulus checks are part of the reason, combined with people pausing big purchases and just squirreling away more cash.
Which again is something that we've talked about. It's just, when was the last time you really like bought something, right? Like no one's buying like the new oven right now that they need. Although maybe that will start to change, and it'll be interesting if it does. It also means, Jill, that any money that you have sitting in a savings account right now isn't doing anything for you. It's not earning anything really in the way of interest. So if you're sitting on cash, maybe you want to put it to work elsewhere. And I think that's probably probably one of the reasons why we've seen this increase in these fluctuations in the stock market with more day traders coming in. But there's pros and cons to this, the savings rate being so high, because a lot of it is what we just said is known as forced savings. There haven't been all these opportunities to splurge recently.
Yeah, I mean, look, Robinhood, that app that is really popular with millennials for trading, they've seen, I think, like 3 million new accounts or something. So it's
Yeah.
there's definite interest, which is, again, pros and cons, but most would argue it's good for more young people to put their money into the markets now, and hopefully just let their money grow. Also, what's troubling is that, as we've said millions of times, the U.S. economy extremely dependent on consumer spending. The survival of a lot of small businesses depends on people opening up their pocketbooks. I think it's about 70% of the U.S. economy is consumer spending. So if
that's
people
the con,
don't spend,
right?
yeah.
That's the con. And the other big unknown, Jill, is what the hell happens after next month. Unemployment benefits are set to expire. It doesn't seem like the Congress is prepared to do anything there. The PPP money is pretty much depleted at this point. I think everyone's either saved or spent their $1,200 Trump bucks. I think that we're underestimating the effect of what's going to happen later in the summer. To your point about who knows what's going to happen in November, there's still a lot of things that I think could go wrong between now and then.
Finally, this news near and dear to my heart, and I think probably yours, Carlo. As part of its iOS 14 software update, Apple has quietly added a feature that will be very welcome to anyone who owns AirPods. Their new iPhone operating system is going to reduce how quickly the battery ages by stopping the charging process automatically. Apparently, when your AirPods are at full battery and remain in the charging case, that little lithium-ion battery erodes over time. So with the new update, the case will learn your charging routine and delay charging past 80%. So this essentially just gives you a little bit more battery life.
I was an AirPod skeptic, Jill, and you changed me, and I'll always remember. I'll always remember you for that. But the battery issue is legit, especially because you can't change them, right? That's my big problem with Apple, which is far and away to me the least bad of the big tech companies in a lot of ways. Everything they make is essentially disposable, right? If you go into the Apple store and you tell them your AirPods are broken and you're under the warranty, they don't fix them. They just throw them away and give you new ones. So it's not a particularly sustainable practice. And those little batteries are, they're tiny, so they don't last that long. So hopefully this goes a little ways in helping that.
Why do you think Apple's the least bad of the tech companies? Because they don't use your data?
Yeah, because their business model is a traditional business model where you pay them for hardware and they give it to you, as opposed to any of the other ones that pretty much rely on advertising.
Just remember, though, that they keep changing the way that you charge, like the size of the charger, which means you always have to get new chargers and you always need new stuff. They could have done a lot to help us out and save us a little money along the way.
No,
but they are a business.
Yeah. No, the changing of the charging thing, I mean, I don't want to stick on this. I think we're already over our time here, but that should have gone down as like a human rights violation when they did that.
Totally.
When you had to get all the new chargers and everything. Yeah, you're right. Now that I remember that, maybe I'll have to change my tune.
Okay. That's what you need to know for Thursday, June 25th. It is Thursday, right? Yes.
It sure is. One more day.
Bye, everybody.